ESTPs are the thrill-seeking, action-oriented masterminds of the Myers-Briggs world, and today we are going to dive into how their mind works, what makes them tick, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Let's go ahead and get started. If you don't know who I am, my name is Susan Storm, and I'm the founder of PsychologyJunkie.com, a website where you can find over 1,000 different articles about the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types. I'm a certified MBTI practitioner and Enneagram coach, and I'm ready to dive in. First off, what is an ESTP? An ESTP is one of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality type, and those letters all stand for something. The E in ESTP stands for extrovert. Extroverts have energy that flows outwards towards objects, projects, activities, experiences, and people in their environment. Their energy is going to be directed outwards, so they're going to be interested in engaging and immersing themselves in the world around them. The S in ESTP stands for sensor. Sensors are realists. They focus on facts, experiences, and what's tangible more than on something that is abstract or theoretical. The T in ESTP stands for thinking. Thinking types try to step out of a situation when they have to make a decision so they can focus on the logic and they can stay objective without being swayed by emotions. And then the P in ESTP stands for perceiving. Perceiving types have an open-ended exploratory approach to life. They like to be free to be spontaneous and flexible rather than being really regimented and routine-oriented. So what drives an ESTP? ESTPs are fueled primarily by one thing, and that thing is experience. They want to live life in high definition, surround sound, ideally with no buffering. Adventure, yes. Problem solving on the fly, absolutely. Sitting in a cubicle doing paperwork for hours, absolutely not. But here's where it gets interesting. Beneath that daredevil energy, there's actually a deeply analytical mind at work. While most people panic in a crisis, ESTPs tend to be 5 steps ahead, figuring out exactly how to turn the situation around. So let's talk about some of the ESTP's superpowers, their natural strengths. They are very quick thinking and adaptable. If you drop them in the middle of a crisis situation, they're probably going to be able to figure out a way to succeed and thrive. 2, they're unshakable under pressure. While you're panicking, they're already solving the problem. 3, they tend to be street smart and resourceful. They know how to read the room, work the system, negotiate, and get what they want. Number 4, they tend to have charisma. They're very good at charming people, reading people, knowing how to persuade. These people are often excellent negotiators. Next, let's look at the ESTP's kryptonite. Long-term planning, questionable at best. ESTPs prefer to live in the now, and they tend to avoid thinking too much about how things could go in the future. 2, sitting still only if they are unconscious. Life is meant to be lived. You are meant to be in it. You are meant to be taking action if you are an ESTP. They don't really like anything that would make them have to be really sedentary. Thinking before acting, not as much their cup of tea. They'd rather live on impulse than spend a lot of time theorizing about how things could go. And then reading between the lines can also be some of a weakness for them. They tend to trust what they can see and what they can observe rather than reading between the lines and trying to find what's going on behind the scenes and undercurrents and patterns. Let's get a little more into this because right now we're really just scratching the surface of what it means to be an ESTP. Let's take a look at their cognitive functions. The cognitive functions are essentially the mental tools you use when you are processing information in the world around you, when you are making decisions, when you are prioritizing what data is important to you and what data isn't. Everyone has access to all 8 of the cognitive functions, but each of us has a preference, a natural wiring towards 4. Think of it as handedness. If you are right-handed, it's very easy for you to do what you need to do with your right hand, but if you had to do the same things with your left hand, it would be really challenging, and your work would probably be more sloppy, and it would be more exhausting for you to do. In the same way, your preferred functions are like your right hand. They come more naturally to you. You get better results with them. So the dominant function for ESTP is extroverted sensing. This is the most natural function to the ESTP. This is their superpower. It's why they seem like they have eyes in the back of their head, why they react faster than most people think, and why they're constantly seeking the most exciting experience. Extroverted sensing is all about immersion in the present moment. Forget overanalyzing or abstract theories. ESTPs live in the here and now. They notice everything, changes in body language, tiny environmental cues. This makes them quick, decisive, and hard to throw off balance. But it also means it can be a little impulsive. So ESTPs are highly observant. They're highly aware of facts, of realities going on around them. They're not the types who are going to be caught off guard because they're stuck in their head. They're going to be conscious of everything going on around them and be able to react very quickly and spontaneously without a lot of stress. Next, let's look at the ESTP's auxiliary function. This is what gives the ESTP balance. When ESTPs are unhealthy, they can lean too heavily into extroverted sensing to the point where they're really impulsive and reckless, and later on they regret it because they didn't really think things through. The auxiliary function, introverted thinking, helps the ESTP to have a more analytical, rational approach to life and to make decisions that are more measured and reasonable. Introverted thinking is what gives the ESTP their sharp analytical edge. It's why they question everything, and they definitely won't accept because I said so or any information given to them just because it's given by someone in a place of authority or someone who has rank. Introverted thinking is their internal logic processor. It's a part of them that breaks things down, troubleshoots, and wants to understand how everything works. It's also the part of them that can sniff out inconsistencies like a bloodhound. If you're getting into an argument with an ESTP, they can quickly point out logical fallacies and let you know where your logic isn't adding up. It's a little frustrating when you just want to be the right one for once. That said, this function makes them excellent problem solvers. If something is broken, whether it's a car or a business or your terrible decision making, an ESTP will figure out how to fix it. Just don't expect a lot of sugarcoating in the process. Next, let's look at the ESTP's tertiary function. This is called extroverted feeling. Extroverted feeling is a strength of the ESTP, but it's one that is not as necessarily consistent as the dominant or auxiliary functions. It can have moments of strength. It can also be used as a tool to sometimes manipulate. So let's take a look at that. Extroverted feeling helps ESTPs to navigate social situations, to read the room, to understand how people are feeling, to understand what societal values are, what's normal, acceptable behavior, and what would be considered weird or odd behavior. It's the function that helps make ESTPs charming, playful, magnetic, fun to be around, humorous. They're able to get into a vibe with other people really quickly and to generate rapport and rub shoulders in a way that allows them to make a good impression. They often know how to crack just the right joke in order to relieve tension or to help someone feel better or to make a good impression of themselves. This is why a lot of the ESTPs end up being the life of the party, whether they mean to be or not. But because extroverted feeling is the tertiary function for ESTPs, at times it can be a little erratic. They can go from being really charming and funny and caring to being very blunt, pointing out a flaw in an argument. They do care about people, but they're more interested in fixing the problem, and they really can't abide illogic or people who are making a lot of decisions clouded by emotion, or particularly people who want to guilt trip other people because they don't have the same values that they have. ESTPs are very independent. They're not swayed by emotional appeals, and they tend to get really annoyed by people who try to tell them, this is how you should behave, or this is how everyone should behave, or these are the rules that everyone should follow. So they can go from being really charming and funny and having a good time to being really blunt and argumentative very quickly. And sometimes what happens is ESTPs end up over-relying on extroverted sensing and extroverted feeling. Because they are extroverts, it's tempting for them to stay in that extroverted world and not really engage their introverted processes. And when this happens, ESTPs get in what's called an SEFE loop. And when they're in a loop, they become very impulsive, very reckless. They get really concerned with what other people think of them. Sometimes they use this to become more people pleasing and try to make a really good impression, and they over care what other people think, or they enjoy trolling people, manipulating them, messing with them just to get a rise out of them. ESTPs in a loop can seem overly concerned with what other people think. They can seem less rational, less realistic. They're too hasty. They're too reckless. They do things that they will regret later. They make really reckless decisions that come back to haunt them in financial issues, addiction issues, relationship issues, all kinds of problems when ESTPs are in an SEFE loop. They really need that introverted thinking part and that introverted intuition part to be able to help them have balance. They need to be able to look before they leap so that they can understand the logic of what they're doing and ask themselves, does this actually make sense to me? They need to be able to anticipate the long-term effects of the decisions that they're making instead of just living moment to moment constantly without any thought of the future. And so it's very important for ESTPs to lean into their strengths of extroverted sensing, but also give themselves that balance of introverted thinking and introverted intuition so that they can not only enjoy the present moment and have good relationships with people, but they can make wise, rational decisions for now and for their future. And that brings us to their inferior function, which is called introverted intuition, or NI for short. Introverted intuition is all about what you can't see right now, what you can't experience right now. It's about getting into different points of view. It's about forecasting how things are going to play out in the future based on patterns that you're seeing in the present. It's about peering behind the scenes to look for insights that aren't immediately obvious. Now, ESTPs want to be good at this function. They really do. And in fact, many people call the inferior function the aspiring function because many of us aspire to be really good at our inferior function. So this function, introverted intuition, usually stays in the background for ESTPs. All people tend to feel pretty vulnerable when they're using their inferior function. They tend to feel like they could get it wrong, like they're going to make a mistake, like they're going to make a fool of themselves. There's a lot of vulnerability around this function. And so for ESTPs, they don't tend to exhibit it a lot. They may try to repress it even because they feel so vulnerable when they're using it, but at the same time, they do realize the importance of it. So what I would suggest for ESTPs is that it's important to take little bits of time, little pockets of time throughout the day to practice introverted intuition, but don't feel like you have to understand how to use it all at once or you have to cram hours of time into using introverted intuition. Here are just a few simple ways that you can tap into introverted intuition if you're an ESTP and you're trying to be more competent in this function. Whenever you get an idea about something, even if you have no idea why or how that idea popped into your head, write it down. Make a journal. Write down these random ideas and insights that come to you. Write down your dreams when you wake up from them. Look back on those ideas later and see if anything came of them. You can think of a person you're having a trouble relating to. You can write a list of that person's characteristics from your own perspective, how you feel about and interpret them. And then you can try to understand, then you can try to write down their characteristics from their perspective and try to think of a positive way to reframe that person's characteristics. This is practicing that perspective shifting side of introverted intuition. Introverted intuition tends to shift from one perspective to another to try to see the whole picture. Another thing you can do is just project yourself into the future. When you're about to make a decision, think, will I be proud of this decision 5 or 10 years from now or on my deathbed? Is this a decision that was actually going to add meaning to my life? Or is this something I could inevitably regret later on? Taking little bits of time to do little practices like this can really help you to exercise introvert intuition, but not in a way that feels overpowering or overwhelming. As an ESTP, your strengths are in the real world. They're with dealing with concrete objects, rolling up your sleeves and getting dirty and making things happen and getting stuff done and being active, being a problem solver. These are your strengths. Having a good relationship with introverted intuition helps you to have that power of practicality, that power of action with insight and forward thinking paired with that. So that's some information about ESTPs for you to get you started on understanding about them. If you would like to find out more, definitely check out my website at psychologyjunkie.com, where you can find many more articles about ESTPs. You can also check out my book, which is called Discovering You, Unlocking the Power of Personality Type, where I have a lot more information about all 16 personality types. If you're not sure what your personality type is and you'd like to talk to me and get some help clarifying your personality type, I would love to work with you. You can book a session with me. I will put a link in the description, and I conduct 1-hour-long sessions where I go through an interview process trying to get to understand what your natural energizers are, as well as the things that stress you out, and try to help you find your best fit personality type. I love doing this. It's one of the favorite parts of my job. So if you need some help clarifying your type or just understanding it better, go ahead and book a session with me and subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.